is the way. This is the way.
For thousands of years, through the rise and fall of the Republic and the Empire, the Mandalorians and their culture has survived. So join us as we take a deep dive into the legends, the lore, and the official canon behind the history of the Mandalorians. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of our channel, please like our content and subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out and gives us the opportunity to produce more content for you. Chapter 1, The Taung. Thousands of years before the Republic, before the helmets and the Beskar-infused armor, there were the Taung. On the core world of Notron, which was later called Coruscant, this ancient gray-skinned humanoid species were native to the planet and were warriors, trained from childhood. The Taung were extremely resilient and strong and able to endure great hardships that other species could not. It made them a formidable warrior race. Each and every member of their society was trained to be warriors. The Taung believed that they honored their gods through battle, and nothing was more honorable than to be a warrior. This warrior culture was the dominant species on the planet for centuries. 200,000 years before the Battle of the Yavin, the native Taung and the Zell, who were the ancestors of the modern humans, began to come into conflict with each other. The fighting lasted for centuries, and eventually the Taungs and their general, who was nicknamed Doom of Omura, took down the Zell's capital, Great Zell. Though the Taung were victorious, they had many casualties, including their general. The Zell fought back and the Taungs made their last stand in the city. The Zells were about to win, but a volcanic eruption took down most of the battalions of Zell and nearly brought them to extinction. The ash from the volcano blocked out the light from the sun, and Notron was in darkness for 2 years. During this time, the Taungs subjugated the remaining Zell. The Taungs viewed this natural disaster as a sign of their destiny to rule, and they took the name Da Werda Verda, which means Warriors of the Shadow in the Taung language. Now, the Taung's victory over the Zell ended up being short-lived, and eventually the Zell won back their control and drove the Taung off of their homeworld around 90,000 BBY. A people without a home, the Taungs fled to the planet Rune, where they lived for a millennia until a new leader arose, a Taung named Mandalore the First. And Mandalore I and the Taung began roaming throughout the Outer Rim as nomads, and eventually conquered a new planet which they renamed after their leader, their new homeworld, Mandalore. The planet Mandalore had a multitude of dangerous creatures, one of which was the Mythosaur, which the Taung were able to eventually slay and drive to extinction. The Taungs recast themselves as the Mandalorians, and the Mythosaur's skull then became a symbol of the Mandalorians themselves. The first mask of Mandalore was worn by Mandalore I. It was actually carved from the bone of a Mythosaur's sternum and was modeled after the facial features of the Taung. This helm became a symbol of leadership to the Mandalorians, passed down to those worthy of the title Mandalore, the leader of the Mandalorian clans. Around 7,000 BBY, the Taung discovered a rare alloy on Mandalore. This was Beskar. Beskar was rare throughout the galaxy and only known to be present on Mandalore and its moon of Concordia. This Mandalorian iron became cherished by the Mandalorians because of its incredible strength and durability, which could even withstand blows from a lightsaber. Mandalorian metalsmiths used techniques to increase the strength of Beskar, and they could combine the Beskar with other alloys to shape it into various configurations for armor and weapons. With the discovery of this rare metal, the Taungs were able to expand and conquer other worlds in the Outer Rim. With honor being gained through battle, the Mandalorians branched out to conquer new worlds. After Mandalore I came Mandalore the Indomitable. In 3,996 BBY, Mandalore the Indomitable pushed campaigns to invade the Titan space. There they encountered the Sith Lord Ulic Qel-Droma, who was leader of the Krath military. Mandalore the Indomitable ended up swearing an oath of allegiance to Qel-Droma and pledged the Mandalorians would fight alongside the Sith in their war against the Jedi. It was around this time that the Mandalorians began taking in other species into their culture, which transformed what it meant to be Mandalorian from a single species to a multi-species warrior culture. Mandalore the Indomitable wore a ceremonial war mask throughout the Great Sith War. The mask was golden with a T-shaped visor. After his death, it was found by his Taung successor, Mandalore the Ultimate. Mandalore the Ultimate led the Mandalorians on a campaign against the Galactic Republic. And then the Jedi Knight Revan and Mandalore the Ultimate faced off, and Revan ultimately was the victor, and hid the mask from the Mandalorians, leaving them leaderless. The Taung race suffered major losses during this campaign, and by the end of the war, were driven to extinction. But the Mandalorian culture survived even though the Taungs passed into history. The Taung and their history is a part of Legends material, so whether or not they are brought into canon remains to be seen. But in canon, in Chapter 8 of The Mandalorian, The armorer does mention Mandalore the Great, who held the title of Mandalore and fought against the Jedi Order, and these battles were known to the Mandalorians through ancient songs. Mandalore the Great's title is very similar to Mandalore the Ultimate, and could be the same Tong leader from Legends. What they choose to bring from the Tong into canon will hopefully be explored in future Star Wars series and films. While the details might change, this Legends material gives us a backstory and a deeper understanding into how the Mandalorians came into being and how their warrior culture first developed. And join us next week as we dive into Chapter 2 of the history of the Mandalorians. So thanks for joining me today on Fatherly Fandom, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And from our families to yours, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.